Ancient Rome Explained. Part 1. The Foundation of Rome, 753 BCE. Every great empire needs an epic origin story, and Rome's is a blockbuster. Forget humble beginnings. We're talking about demigod parentage, a jealous king, and a she-wolf doubling as a foster mom. The legend begins with twin brothers, Romulus and Remus, sons of Mars, the god of war himself. Cast out to die in the Tiber River by a nervous uncle who stole their grandfather's throne, they were miraculously saved. Instead of drowning, their basket washed ashore where they were found and suckled by a she-wolf. Yes, you heard that right. Rome's founders were raised by a wolf, which tells you everything you need to know about their future attitude. After being raised by a shepherd, they returned as adults, restored their grandfather to the throne, and set out to found their own city in 753 BCE. But here's where the brotherly love ends. They argued over which hill to build on, and in a fit of rage that would become characteristically Roman, Romulus killed Remus. He then named the city after himself, and its destiny was sealed in blood and ambition. This brutal, mythic founding became the DNA of the Roman spirit, a belief they were destined for greatness, favored by the gods, and utterly unapologetic about crushing anyone who stood in their way. Part 2. The Birth of the Republic, 509 BCE. After the legendary Romulus, Rome was ruled by a series of kings, some good, some not so much. The last one, Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, or Tarquin the Proud, was a textbook tyrant. He ruled with an iron fist, ignored the traditional advisory council of elders, the Senate, and his son's crimes were the final straw that broke the camel's back. In 509 BCE, the Roman elite had enough. Led by heroes like Lucius Junius Brutus, an ancestor of the Brutus who would later stab Caesar, they staged a revolution. They didn't just kick Tarquin out, they kicked out the entire concept of kingship. The very word king, or rex, became toxic in Rome for centuries. In its place, they created something revolutionary, the res publica, the public thing, or the republic. Power would no longer be in the hands of one man for life. Instead, it was shared. They elected 2 consuls to lead, but only for 1-year terms, and each could veto the other's decisions. It was a brilliant system designed to prevent any single person from ever accumulating too much power again. This wasn't a modern democracy. The wealthy aristocracy still held most of the cards, but it was a radical idea that would propel Rome from a regional power to a global superpower. Part 3. The Punic Wars, 264146 BCE. With Italy secured, Rome looked across the sea and saw its shadow self, Carthage, a mighty trading empire in North Africa. What followed wasn't just a war, it was a century-long 3-round heavyweight championship for control of the known world. The First Punic War was a brutal naval slugfest. Rome, a land power, had to learn how to fight at sea on the fly, and they did it with ruthless ingenuity. They captured a Carthaginian warship, copied it, and added a secret weapon, the corvus, a giant spiked boarding plank that turned sea battles into bloody land battles on deck. Rome won, but the rivalry was far from over. The second round was the stuff of legend, thanks to one man, Hannibal Barca. In one of the most audacious military moves in history, he marched his army, complete with war elephants, from Spain, over the frozen Alps, and crashed into Italy's heartland. At the Battle of Cannae in 216 BCE, he executed a perfect encirclement, annihilating a Roman army twice the size of his own. Any other power would have surrendered. But Rome's superpower was its stubborn refusal to lose. They absorbed the blow, regrouped, and produced their own genius general, Scipio Africanus, who defeated Hannibal at Zama. The Third Punic War was a grim finale where Rome, now utterly dominant, razed Carthage to the ground, ensuring its ultimate rival would never rise again. Part 4. Expansion in the East, 2nd–1st century BCE. Having conquered the West, Rome turned its gaze east toward the glittering ancient civilizations of Greece, Macedon, and Asia Minor. These were the successor kingdoms of Alexander the Great, rich in culture and history, but politically divided and ripe for the picking. Rome's strategy was brilliant and predatory. They didn't just show up and declare war. They played the long game. They would intervene in local disputes, offering protection or liberation to one Greek city-state against another. They presented themselves as allies, peacekeepers, the saviors of Greek freedom. But once the Roman legions arrived, they had a habit of never leaving. One by one, the great Hellenistic kingdoms fell under Roman influence, becoming provinces of the ever-expanding republic. It was a fascinating cultural exchange. Rome conquered Greece with its swords, but Greek culture conquered Rome with its art, philosophy, and literature. The final piece of the puzzle was Egypt, the wealthiest kingdom of all. Ruled by the legendary Cleopatra, it remained a client state until she disastrously backed the wrong side in a Roman civil war. Her defeat and suicide alongside her lover, Mark Antony, at the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE, meant that the land of the pharaohs was now just another province, the personal breadbasket for Rome's future emperor. Part 5. Civil Wars of the Late Republic. Rome had conquered the world, but in doing so it had poisoned itself. The old republican system wasn't built to manage a global empire, and the vast fortunes and power up for grabs proved too tempting. The state was torn apart by a series of brutal civil wars, a clash of titans whose ambitions were bigger than Rome itself. Towering above them all was Gaius Julius Caesar, a military genius, a charismatic populist, and an author of his own epic story. Caesar spent nearly a decade conquering Gaul. This campaign made him fabulously wealthy, and more importantly, gave him a battle-hardened army that was loyal not to the Senate, but to him personally. The Senate, championed by Caesar's rival Pompey the Great, saw the writing on the wall. They declared him an enemy of the state and ordered him to disband his legions. In 49 BCE, Caesar marched his army to the edge of the Rubicon River, the legal boundary of Italy. To cross it with an army was an act of treason and war. His decision changed the world forever. He crossed, uttering the immortal line, "The die is cast." He shattered Pompey's forces at the Battle of Pharsalus and returned to Rome as its absolute master. He was made dictator for life, but for many senators, that was just king by another name. On the Ides of March, 44 BCE, they assassinated him to save the Republic, but they only succeeded in signing its death warrant. Part 6. The Rise of the Empire, 31 BCE, 14 CE. The daggers that killed Caesar did not restore the Republic. They unleashed 13 more years of bloody civil war. The power vacuum was filled by two men, Caesar's loyal and formidable general, Mark Antony, and Caesar's brilliant, underestimated teenage grandnephew and adopted heir, Octavian. After hunting down Caesar's assassins, they inevitably turned on each other in a final struggle for supremacy. Antony, the soldier, allied himself with the Queen of Egypt, Cleopatra. Octavian, the master strategist, stayed in Rome and waged a brilliant propaganda campaign, portraying Antony as a debauched traitor under the spell of a foreign seductress. The final showdown came at the naval battle of Actium in 31 BCE. Octavian's fleet, under the command of his genius Admiral Agrippa, crushed the forces of Antony and Cleopatra. They fled to Egypt and took their own lives, leaving the 32-year-old Octavian as the sole ruler of the Roman world. But Octavian had learned from his great-uncle's mistake. He knew Romans would never accept a king. So, in a stroke of political genius, he announced the restoration of the Republic while quietly holding all the real power. He called himself Princeps, or First Citizen, and the grateful Senate bestowed upon him the new name Augustus. The Republic was now an imperial monarchy in all but name, and the Roman Empire was born, kicking off 2 centuries of unprecedented peace and prosperity. The Pax Romana. Part 7. High Empire and Major Conflicts, 1st–3rd centuries CE. For nearly 200 years after Augustus, the Roman Empire was the undisputed superpower of the world. The Pax Romana brought stability, trade flourished, and engineers built roads, bridges, and aqueducts so brilliant that some are still in use today. But this peace was paid for in blood at the frontiers. Even during the reign of Augustus, the empire suffered one of its most crushing defeats. In 9 CE, 3 entire legions were lured into an ambush in the Teutoburg forest by Germanic tribes and were completely annihilated. The loss was so catastrophic that it permanently halted Roman expansion into Germany. A century later, under the soldier emperor Trajan, the empire reached its absolute maximum extent. His legions conquered Dacia, modern Romania, securing its rich gold mines, and marched all the way to the Persian Gulf, annexing Mesopotamia. For a brief, glorious moment, Rome was larger and more powerful than it had ever been. But it couldn't last. The 3rd century CE was a period of near-total collapse, a 50-year-long nightmare known as the crisis of the 3rd century. The empire was ripped apart by constant civil wars, plagues, and relentless invasions along its borders, proving that even the mightiest empires can be brought to the brink of extinction. Part 8. Decline and Fall, 4th–5th centuries CE. The Roman Empire didn't fall in a day. It was a long, slow, agonizing decline. The 4th century brought 2 revolutionary changes under one man, Constantine the Great. After winning the Battle of the Milvian Bridge in 312 CE, he converted to Christianity, transforming a persecuted faith into the future religion of the empire. He also moved the capital eastward to a new city he named after himself, Constantinople, shifting the empire's center of gravity away from Italy forever. By 395 CE, this split became permanent. The empire was officially divided into 2 halves: the Western Empire, based in Italy, and the far wealthier and more stable Eastern Empire. The West was now hollowed out, struggling to defend its vast frontiers against waves of migrating peoples: Goths, Vandals, and Franks, who were both invaders and refugees. The psychological shock came in 410 CE, when the Visigoths did the unthinkable. They sacked the city of Rome itself. The end, when it came, was not with a bang, but a whimper. The Western emperors had become powerless puppets. In 476 CE, the last of them, a young boy ironically named Romulus Augustulus, was unceremoniously deposed by a Germanic general. No new emperor was named to replace him. The Western Roman Empire had simply ceased to be. That's it for this video. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.